Chapter 1. Perfect Life That Wasn't. Mia Bennett was 35 years old and lived in New York City with her husband Aaron. They had been married for 7 years. To other people their life looked beautiful. They had a clean apartment, good clothes and kind smiles. Friends often said, "You two are lucky." When people visited they saw laughter. But no one saw what was missing. Aaron worked for a large technology company. He was honest and warm. Everyone liked him. Mia worked in a busy bank. She was smart and hardworking. Her boss trusted her with big projects. At work she felt confident and proud. At home she felt small and unsure. One evening Aaron made dinner and said softly, "Mia, imagine a little boy running here calling us Mom and Dad." His eyes were full of dreams. She smiled faintly and said, "That sounds sweet." Inside her heart became heavy. She could not see that dream. She wanted freedom, travel and time. She wanted to reach higher in her career. She did not want to be a mother. Aaron never forced her, but he hoped she would change. He often talked about friends who had babies. He would show her pictures and laugh. She would nod, pretending to listen. Later in bed she stared at the ceiling and whispered to herself, "Why don't I feel the same?" Their weekends became quiet. They went out for dinner but spoke less. Sometimes Aaron looked at her for a long moment as if trying to read her thoughts. She turned away. At work she was cheerful and alive. At home she carried invisible weight. When Aaron's mother visited, she hugged Mia warmly and said, "You'll be a wonderful mother one day." Mia smiled again. "Maybe soon," she said, though her voice trembled. Aaron's mother laughed happily, not seeing the fear in Mia's eyes. One night Mia wrote in her small diary, "I love Aaron. He is good to me, but when he talks about babies I feel lost. I am afraid to tell him the truth." She closed the book quickly when she heard footsteps. Aaron entered the room and said, "You look tired. You should rest." She nodded. They both smiled, pretending everything was fine, but things were changing quietly. Aaron began to come home early, hoping to spend time with her. Mia stayed late at work, saying she had reports to finish. The gap between them grew slowly, like a shadow. At the bank, Mia's boss praised her. "You have leadership in you," he said. "If you keep this pace you could be promoted soon." She felt proud. That night, she returned home excited. But Aaron looked distant. She shared her news, expecting him to be happy. He said softly, "That's good, Mia," and went back to reading. His eyes had sadness. Later that night he whispered, "Work gives you everything now. What about us?" Mia didn't answer. She just held his hand quietly. Tears filled her eyes. She wanted to speak but couldn't. Weeks passed. Friends invited them to dinner. Everyone talked about family plans. Aaron laughed and joined the talk. Mia felt trapped in a room full of smiling faces. She went to the restroom, looked at herself in the mirror and said, "Why can't I be like them?" At home she tried to act normal. She cooked his favorite food and played his favorite songs, but the silence between them stayed. When he said, "I love you," she replied softly, "I love you too," though her voice sounded far away. One Sunday morning Aaron said, "Mia, I want to ask something real. Do you see children in our future?" She looked at him for a long time. "I don't know," she said quietly. He sighed and walked to the balcony. "I just wish you could feel what I feel," he murmured. That evening she sat alone on the couch and looked around the house. The photos, the warm lights, the calm air. Everything looked perfect, yet her heart ached. She whispered, "Something is missing and I don't know what." Before sleeping she touched Aaron's shoulder and said softly, "I'm sorry if I make you sad." He turned, smiled weakly and said, "We'll be okay." But both knew things were changing. Love was still there, but it was quieter. Now, it lived behind polite words and gentle smiles. Mia lay awake thinking about her life. She thought about her job, her dreams, and the fear that one day she might lose herself completely. She didn't know it yet, but this quiet distance would soon become the biggest storm of her life. Like, subscribe, and share. Read this story and many more on our website, bookishenglish.com. Link in the description. Chapter 2. The Question That Never Stops. The weeks after that quiet talk felt heavier for Mia. She tried to forget the topic, but it followed her everywhere. Every phone call from family began the same way. "So, any good news?" Her mother-in-law laughed as she asked it. But for Mia, those words were like small stones falling on her heart. She smiled on the outside and said, "Not yet. We're just enjoying life." Inside she whispered, "Please stop asking." Aaron never argued with her, but she could feel the pressure in his eyes. He talked more about friends who had babies. He smiled when he saw them online. When they visited his sister's house, her little nephew ran toward him, shouting, "Uncle Aaron." Aaron lifted the child high and laughed with pure joy. Mia stood near the door, her smile tight. His sister said, "You'll be next." "You'll see." Mia only nodded. That night on the way home, Aaron said softly, "You looked sad today." She said, "I was just tired." He reached for her hand, but she looked away. Silence filled the car. When they reached home, Aaron turned off the light and said, "I don't understand you anymore." Her heart broke a little more. At work, things were easier. People respected her. Her boss said, "Mia, you have a strong mind." She liked hearing that. It made her feel alive. Yet each evening when she returned home, the weight returned too. The small apartment that once felt warm now felt like a space full of unspoken thoughts. A few days later, Aaron's parents came over for dinner. His mother brought homemade pie and a small gift box. Inside were tiny baby socks. "Just to keep the hope alive," she said kindly. Everyone laughed, but Mia felt her stomach twist. She went to the kitchen, pretending to check the food. Aaron followed her quietly. "Please don't take it the wrong way," he said. "She just loves us." Mia turned and whispered, "And I feel like I can't breathe." After they left, Aaron sat beside her and said, "You know, I don't want to force you, but I want to know what we are waiting for." She said, "I need time." He asked how much. She had no answer. Days turned into months. The question became a shadow in every corner of their home. It waited at the breakfast table. It sat beside them during movies. It slept between them at night. Mia wanted to run away from it, but there was nowhere to go. One morning, she met her friend Lisa for coffee. Lisa said, "You should think about it. You're not getting younger." Mia looked down and said, "I just want to be sure before I bring someone into this world." Lisa smiled kindly but didn't understand. That evening, Aaron came home early with flowers. "Maybe dinner out," he said, trying to bring back their old laughter. At the restaurant, everything seemed fine until he asked again, "Do you ever imagine us with a baby?" Mia put down her fork slowly. "I imagine us happy," she said. He sighed. "For me, that's the same thing." The word stayed in her mind all night. She lay awake and thought, what if love is not enough? A week later, her boss called her to his office. "You've been selected for the leadership conference in Chicago," he said. She smiled for the first time in days. That night she told Aaron the news. He hugged her and said, "I'm proud of you," but later he added softly, "When you come back, maybe we can talk seriously about the family." She nodded, pretending not to hear. At the conference she met women from across the country, strong, successful, happy women who had chosen careers instead of families. One woman said, "You don't need to follow the map others drew." Those words stayed with her. For the first time, Mia didn't feel wrong. She felt understood. When she returned home, Aaron welcomed her with a smile. He had cooked dinner, something he rarely did. "Maybe this will make you stay home more," he said jokingly. They laughed, but their laughter sounded tired. Later that night, when she hugged him, she felt both love and distance. The next morning, Aaron's mother called again. "I dreamed of a baby last night," she said happily. Mia said, "That's lovely," and hung up quickly. Her hands were shaking. She realized this question was not going to stop. It would come again and again, until something inside her broke. That night she stood near the window, while Aaron slept. The city lights glowed outside. She whispered to herself, "What if I never want what he wants? How long can love survive when dreams are different?" Her eyes filled with tears. She loved her husband deeply, but she loved her truth too. She didn't know which one she could keep. The question would not end. It was waiting for her. Again in the morning. Join our membership for exclusive English stories. Chapter 3. The Distance Between Us. After that, something between Mia and Aaron began to fade. They were still kind to each other, but the warmth was no longer the same. Every conversation felt like walking on thin ice. They both smiled, but those smiles no longer reached their eyes. Aaron tried to bring small joys into their life. He planned weekend breakfasts and movie nights. He tried new recipes just to make her laugh. But Mia was lost in her thoughts. She worked longer hours, came home late, and often found Aaron asleep on the couch. Sometimes he woke up and said softly, "You're home late again." She would reply, "There was too much work." He nodded but said nothing more. At the bank, Mia's world was different. She was strong, respected, and full of life. Her boss trusted her completely. Her coworkers admired her. One afternoon, her boss said, "Mia, you're one of the best. You have a future here." Those words filled her heart with pride. But as soon as she left the office, that feeling disappeared. When she got home, Aaron greeted her with quiet eyes. He looked at her and said, "I feel like you don't see me anymore." She tried to smile. "Of course I do," she said. But he shook his head gently. "Not really. You're here, but your heart is somewhere else." She didn't reply. She didn't know what to say. Days turned into months. Mia's career grew fast. She was invited to attend leadership meetings. She started mentoring young women at work. She loved those moments. She felt useful, confident, and respected. But at home she felt smaller with every passing day. One night Aaron made her favorite dinner. He waited patiently, but Mia arrived 2 hours late. She found him sitting quietly at the table, the food cold. She said softly, "I'm sorry." He looked at her and asked, "Are you really happy with me, Mia?" She froze. "Why would you say that?" she asked. "Because I can't feel it anymore," he said in a tired voice, her eyes filled with tears. "I love you, Aaron. I really do," she whispered. He nodded, but looked away. "I know you love me, but sometimes love is not enough." Those words stayed in her heart all night. The next morning she tried to make things better. She made him coffee, smiled more, asked about his work. But something inside her felt broken. She couldn't force the feelings she didn't have. When he left for work, she sat at the table alone and whispered, "What's happening to us?" Her friend Lisa noticed the sadness in her over lunch. Lisa said, "You and Aaron used to be the happiest couple I knew." Mia smiled weakly. "People change," she said. "No," Lisa replied. "They just stop listening." That night Aaron came home early. He looked at her and said, "We never talk anymore." She said, "We're talking now." He gave a small laugh, then said, "No, Mia. Talking isn't just words. It's sharing." She didn't want to cry, but she couldn't stop. "I'm trying," she whispered. He shook his head and said, "You're trying to survive, not to love." After that, silence became their new language. They ate together, but their minds were miles apart. Every time Aaron tried to reach her, she turned toward her work. Every time she tried to speak, fear stopped her. One weekend they went to visit his parents again. His mother greeted them with open arms. "Still no little ones," she said playfully. Aaron smiled sadly. Mia forced a smile, too. But that night when they got home, Aaron didn't say a word. He went straight to bed. Mia stood near the window and whispered, "I can't live someone else's dream." Her tears rolled down silently. She wanted to tell him everything, but she was afraid. Afraid of hurting him, afraid of losing him. A few days later, her boss called her in. "You're being considered for a new senior position," he said. "It'll need travel and long hours, but it's a big step." She smiled, but her heart was heavy. She knew Aaron wouldn't be happy about it. That evening she told him the news. "That's great," he said softly. "So now I'll see you even less." She tried to explain. "It's just a few trips," he replied. "It's always just a few trips, Mia. Everything in our life is about your work." She took his hand and said, "You're my husband. You're not less important." He looked at her and said, "Then why do I feel invisible?" His words hit her deeply. She stayed awake all night staring at the ceiling. She remembered the early days when they talked for hours, laughed for no reason, and planned their future together. She missed that time, but she didn't know how to go back. The next morning Aaron said, "Maybe we should take a trip together. Just us." She said, "Maybe next month." He smiled faintly and said, "That's what you said last time." When he left for work, Mia opened her diary again. She wrote slowly, "I still love him, but I'm losing him. I can feel it. I'm afraid that soon I'll lose myself, too." Her tears fell on the paper. She closed the diary and pressed it to her chest. For the first time she felt the real distance between them. Not the distance of space, but the distance of hearts. And deep down she knew something was coming. Something that would change everything forever. Chapter 4. The Stranger Who Understood. Mia's days at the bank became longer. She threw herself into work because it was the only place where she still felt sure of who she was. Her boss noticed. "You never stop," he said kindly. "You'll burn out." She smiled and replied, "Work is easier than feelings." He didn't ask more. One Tuesday morning, a new client arrived. His name was Luke Parker. He was polite, calm, and spoke with quiet humor. He needed help with his company accounts. Mia handled his papers quickly. When he said, "You seem to really like your job," she answered softly, "It's the one thing I understand." He smiled. Then, "You're lucky. Most people never find something they understand." His words stayed with her. Few days later he came again. They talked about more than money. Luke told her he had never married. He said, "I like my Space. Children are wonderful for other people. Mia's heart beat faster. She said quietly, "That's how I feel too." For the first time someone understood. Without judging her. Soon their short meetings turned into longer ones. Sometimes he brought coffee for both. They laughed about small things. When he left, she felt lighter. That evening she told herself it's just friendship, nothing more. But deep inside she knew it meant more than she wanted to admit. At home, Aaron noticed her mood change. "You seem happier these days," he said. She smiled. "Maybe I'm just less tired." He nodded, but there was doubt in his eyes. He wanted to believe her, yet something inside him whispered that she was drifting away. One evening Luke asked, "Do you ever feel unseen?" She looked down and said, "Every day." He said, "Then talk to him." She shook her head. "He hears my words, not my heart." Luke sighed. "Then you need to decide what peace means to you." Their friendship grew quietly, but offices have eyes. Coworkers began to whisper, "She spends a lot of time with that client," someone said. Another replied, "Her marriage must be rocky." Mia heard the voices behind her back. She kept working, pretending not to care. Yet, each word cut deep. Her boss called her in. "I trust you," he said. "But people are talking. Keep things professional." She nodded. When she walked back to her desk, she felt the ground under her shaking. That night, Aaron greeted her with a calm voice that scared her more than anger. "Is there something you want to tell me?" She frowned. "No." "Why?" He shrugged. "You seem far away." She whispered, "Maybe we're both far away." He looked at her for a long time and said, "Then find a way back." The next day she met Luke for coffee one last time. "I think we shouldn't meet anymore," she said. He asked, "Because of what people say?" She nodded. "Because I'm married and because I'm lost." He smiled sadly. "You're not lost, Mia. You're just finally honest." His voice trembled. "Take care of yourself," she said softly. "Thank you for seeing me." They both knew it was goodbye. That night she returned home early. Aaron was sitting in the living room, quiet and serious. Her phone buzzed. It was a short message from Luke. "Thank you for today." Aaron's eyes moved to the phone. "What's that?" he asked. She froze. Before she could hide it, he picked it up and read. His face turned red. "Who is Luke?" She tried to speak. "He's a client." Aaron shouted. "Then why is a client thanking my wife at night?" She whispered. "Because I helped him." He stepped back and said bitterly, "Or because you needed him." She cried and said, "It's not what you think." He looked away. "I don't even know who you are anymore." He walked to the bedroom and closed the door. Mia sat on the floor holding her phone, shaking. She didn't reply to Luke's message. She deleted it, but the damage was already done. For the next few days Aaron barely spoke. Mia cooked his meals, tried to talk, but his silence was like a wall. She whispered to him one night, "Please, believe me," he said quietly. "I believe what I see." Mia went to work the next morning with red eyes. Her coworker asked, "Are you okay?" She nodded. "Just tired." Inside she felt her world falling apart. She had not betrayed Aaron, but her heart had crossed a line she could never explain. In the evening she came home to find Aaron sitting at the table. He said coldly, "We need to decide what we're doing." She asked, "About what?" He said, "About us. About the life you say you don't want." She looked at him and said softly, "Can we talk tomorrow?" He shook his head. "Tomorrow might be too late." She went to bed crying silently. The pillow was wet, her heart heavier than ever. She thought of Luke's words. You're just finally honest. But honesty was costing her everything. And in that moment she realized her life was about to change forever. Super thanks helps us keep creating stories like this. Thank you for your support. Chapter 5. The Message That Broke Everything. The night Aaron found Luke's message was the night everything between them truly cracked. It was only a few words. Thank you for today. Yet those words destroyed the small trust that still held them together. Aaron didn't yell right away. He stood still, holding the phone in silence. His eyes were sharp, his voice quiet. Too quiet. So this is what you do after work? He asked. Mia shook her head quickly. No, it's not like that. Please listen. But he didn't want explanations. He placed the phone on the table and said, I thought we were honest with each other. Mia tried to hold his hand, but he moved away. You don't understand, she said. He's just someone who listened when I had no one to talk to. Aaron's jaw tightened. That's the problem, Mia. You had me. Her eyes filled with tears. You stopped hearing me long ago, she whispered. The silence after that sentence was louder than any shout. Aaron walked to the bedroom. I can't talk right now, he said coldly. She sat her day on the floor beside the couch, crying into her hands. For the first time she felt like a stranger in her own home. The next morning Aaron left early, without saying goodbye. He didn't answer her calls that day. When he returned home at night, his face looked empty. I'm not sure who you are anymore, he said quietly. Was our marriage just waiting to end? Mia said softly. No, it was waiting to be understood. But Aaron had stopped believing her. The house became silent again. She tried to explain things, but he didn't want to listen. He thought Luke had changed her mind about children, about love, about everything. He was wrong, but he didn't want to be right. At work, the gossip spread faster than she could stop it. 2 coworkers were whispering near the elevator. She's the one with the client, one said. The other laughed softly. No wonder her husband's upset. Mia walked past them without a word, but her chest hurt. That night she looked at herself in the mirror and said, I didn't do anything wrong, but I'm still the one paying the price. Her boss called her in the next day. Mia, this is getting too much attention, he said. You're valuable to us, but you must protect your image. She nodded silently. When she came out of his office, she felt small and tired. At home, Aaron was distant. He didn't ask about her day, and she didn't ask about his. They lived together but apart. Sometimes she saw him staring at old photos. Their wedding picture, the one where she was laughing with her eyes closed. He touched the frame for a moment, then looked away. One evening, Mia placed dinner on the table. Aaron sat quietly, then finally said, I've made a decision. Her hands trembled. What decision? She asked. You have to choose, he said. End all contact with Luke. Promise to start a family and we move on. Or don't and we end this marriage. Her heart pounded. Aaron, she whispered. Don't make me choose between being myself and being your wife. He said coldly. Then maybe you were never meant to be my wife. Mia couldn't breathe. She said, You're asking me to live a lie. He replied, No, I'm asking you to live our dream. She looked at him with tears running down her face. It's your dream, Aaron, not mine. He stood up and said quietly, Then I guess that's all there is left to say. He walked away again and she was left staring at the empty chair across the table. The next few days were harder than anything before. People at work avoided her. Friends stopped calling. Even Lisa didn't know what to say anymore. Mia wrote in her diary every night just to keep herself sane. I feel invisible, she wrote. Everything is slipping away. My marriage, my peace, my reputation. I only wanted to be honest, but honesty has turned into punishment. Aaron stopped wearing his wedding ring. One morning she noticed it missing from his finger. She didn't ask why. That night he came home late and said, "You made your choice the moment you decided to let someone else in." She cried and said, "I never let him in. I only needed to be heard." He replied, "And I only needed a wife who wanted the same future as me." They stared at each other. Two people who loved each other deeply but no longer spoke the same language. The next morning Aaron left without looking back. Mia sat in the quiet apartment, surrounded by silence. The coffee on the table went cold. She looked at their photo one last time and whispered, "Maybe love isn't about holding on. Maybe it's about letting go before we destroy each other completely." That night, she took off her wedding ring and placed it beside his on the table. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing. Nothing would ever be the same again. Her phone buzzed. A message from Luke appeared. "I'm leaving town tomorrow. I hope you find peace, Mia." She didn't reply. She simply whispered, "Goodbye." And with that single word, her old life quietly ended. Chapter 6. The Night by the River. The night after Aaron left felt endless. Mia sat alone, the silence heavier than words. She had lost everything she thought she could hold on to. Her marriage, her peace, her sense of home. Gone in one storm of truth. She picked up her diary but couldn't write a single word. Her hands were shaking too much. She walked outside, wandering through quiet streets until she reached the river. The water moved, slowly, calm but cold. She looked at it and whispered, "What did I do wrong? Was honesty a mistake?" Tears ran down her face. In that still night, her own voice was the only sound she heard. She thought about her mother, who once told her, "Never forget yourself in love." Those words echoed inside her now. She had tried to be a good wife, a good woman, but she had forgotten to be herself. Mia closed her eyes and remembered the small moments. The first time Aaron had held her hand, the laughter that used to fill their kitchen, the quiet mornings with coffee and dreams. She whispered, "I loved you, Aaron. I still do, but love can't make me someone else." The wind felt colder, yet her heart felt lighter. She finally understood that she hadn't chosen freedom over love. She had chosen truth over pretending. She sat there for a long time, letting the pain wash through her. It didn't go away, but it became softer, like a wound slowly learning to heal. When the first light of morning touched the sky, Mia stood up. Her face was tired, but her eyes looked clear. She whispered to herself, "I will be fine. Maybe not today, but one day." That same day she went home and packed few things. She left the apartment quietly. No goodbye note, no tears this time. Only a deep breath and a silent promise to rebuild herself from the pieces that were left. She moved into a small rented room near her office. It wasn't home, but it was hers. For the first time in years she didn't feel trapped by anyone's dream. She felt scared, yes, but also alive. At night, she stood by the window and whispered, "This is not the end. This is just a different beginning." Her voice was calm. The tears had stopped. And in that small moment she realized something powerful. Sometimes, life breaks you only to show you who you really are. Chapter 7. The Goodbye That Freed Me. Days turned into weeks and Mia's life slowly took a new shape. She woke up alone every morning, made coffee for one, and walked to work quietly. People at the bank had stopped whispering, but their silence still carried judgment. She didn't mind anymore. She was learning to live without explanation. One afternoon her boss called her in. "I know you've had a rough time," he said kindly, "but I'm proud of how you've handled it. We're giving you a new project, a program to help women manage their finances." Mia nodded, her eyes soft with emotion. "Thank you," she said. "I'll give it my best." Inside she felt a new strength rising, one that didn't depend on anyone's love or approval. At night she still thought of Aaron. Sometimes she saw his old texts when she scrolled through her phone. Once she even started typing his name, but "Stop," she whispered. "You deserve peace and so do I." Then she deleted the message. That moment felt like closing a door she had been afraid to touch. Her work became her therapy. She met women who told her stories of broken marriages, lost dreams, and quiet courage. Each story reminded her that pain could also become power. During a seminar, a woman said to her, "You talk like someone who has lived through fire." Mia smiled gently and replied, "Maybe I did." One evening after work, she saw Aaron waiting near the building. Her heart jumped. He looked the same, calm, kind, and familiar. He said softly, "Can we talk?" They sat on a bench nearby. For a moment neither spoke. Then Aaron said, "I just wanted to know if you're okay." She nodded. "I'm okay now." He sighed. "I didn't come to change your mind. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for making you feel trapped." Her eyes filled with tears. "And I'm sorry for making you feel unloved." He smiled faintly. "I think we both did our best." She whispered, "We did." They talked for a few more minutes, not as husband and wife but as two people who once loved each other deeply and finally understood that love was not always enough. When he stood up to leave, he said quietly, "Take care, Mia." She smiled through her tears. "You too, Aaron." As he walked away, she didn't feel anger or regret, only peace. It was the kind of peace that comes after long pain, quiet and gentle. She whispered to herself, "That's our real goodbye." Later that night, Mia went home and Saturday by her window. She opened her diary and wrote slowly, "Today I learned that letting go is not the same as losing. It's freeing both hearts to heal weeks past." Her project at the bank grew fast. She worked with schools and community groups, helping women find confidence and independence. Every story she heard became a piece of her own healing. One morning she received a letter from the bank's main office. She had been nominated for a leadership award. Her hands trembled as she read. She smiled softly and said aloud, "Maybe the world is finally seeing me for who I really am." That evening she walked home feeling light. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "I made it through." Her voice was calm, full of quiet strength. For the first time in years, she felt proud not of what she achieved, but of what she survived. In her heart she still carried love for Aaron, but it no longer hurt. It had changed into gratitude, into a memory that taught her the value of truth. And when she closed her eyes that night, she smiled and said, "Goodbye, but thank you for being part of the story that made me strong." Her goodbye had finally set her free. Chapter 8. The Peace I Finally Found. Months passed after that last meeting with Aaron. The world outside looked the same, but everything inside Mia had changed. She had stopped expecting anyone to complete her. She had learned that peace wasn't something people gave. It was something you built inside yourself, piece by piece. Her new apartment was small but full of calm. Every morning she made her own breakfast, played soft music, and whispered, "I'm still here and I'm still trying." She adopted a small dog and named her Luna. The tiny creature followed her everywhere, giving silent comfort. Sometimes when she looked into Those eyes, she said softly, you saved me in ways you'll never know. Work became a place of purpose again. Her women's financial project grew into something beautiful. She met single mothers, divorced women, and even widows who wanted to start again. One woman held her hand after a session and said, "You talk like someone who understands pain." Mia smiled. "I think pain teaches us how to love ourselves," she replied. Those words stayed in the woman's eyes long after she left. One morning Mia received an email from the head office. She had been chosen for a national award. The note said, "Your work has changed many lives." She read it twice, tears filling her eyes. She whispered, "Maybe I finally changed my own life too." That evening she sat quietly with a cup of tea. The sun was setting outside and the light touched her face gently. She opened her diary and wrote, "I have forgiven everything, him, myself, and the silence between us." She paused, thinking about Aaron. She didn't hate him. She never had. She only wished he found what he was looking for. A few days later, a postcard arrived in her mailbox. It was from Luke. The message was short. "Saw your name in the news. Proud of you. Keep shining." She smiled softly, folded the card, and placed it inside her journal. "Thank you," she whispered. It was the final closure she didn't know she needed. Life started feeling gentle again. On weekends she walked Luna through quiet streets and stopped to talk with people she met along the way. She laughed more. She slept better. She even began teaching evening classes for women who wanted to rebuild their confidence. During one class, a young woman asked, "How do you move on after losing love?" Mia thought for a long moment, then said, softly, "You don't move on, you move with it. You carry the lessons, not the pain." The whole room went silent. Her eyes glistened as she added, "Love that ends can still make you a better person." That night back home she stood near the window and whispered to the quiet sky, "I did it, Mom. I found myself again." For the first time she felt complete. Not because someone loved her, but because she finally loved who she was. Before sleeping she looked at her reflection and said, "I am enough." The words were simple but powerful. They were no longer just words. They were her truth. She turned off the light, smiled, and whispered one last line in the dark. "Thank you, life, for breaking me just enough to rebuild me." Right. And with that, her story found its peace. Thank you for reading. Like, subscribe, and share. Read this story and many more on our website, bookishenglish.com. Link in the description. The end.